Good afternoon. We're in my quilting studio today, and before we get started on finishing up our quilt, I wanted to share a different kind of quilt with you because you may see some of this as you run across different blocks or different things in your quilting search. This is a quilt that is cross-stitched. And you'll notice that the stars here are a little bit different. This star and the star on the end are the same, but the stars are a little bit different. This the cross-stitching was made by a woman in a nursing home, and her daughter used to just take her all kinds of pieces of cross-stitch or pieces of embroidery so that she could stay busy, and apparently she was very fast at what she did. And then the daughter took this and put some sashing around the edges of each of these blocks and has made this into a very large quilt. I have it out for you to see before I do the quilting on it. I'm going to do an all-over quilting pattern on it, but it really is a nice piece, and it's a nice remembrance piece because this woman's mother made all of these blocks by hand, and apparently, it took her a little while to do that, and she did a beautiful job. So I just wanted to share that with you before I quilted it so you could see the difference, and I'll share that with you at a different time. But this is a really nice piece that I thought you might enjoy looking at. And now let's just get on to our quilt that we're making together, okay? Here's our quilt, and we're getting ready to put it together. I want you to think of this quilt as a grilled cheese sandwich. And you're probably thinking, well, that's a stretch. And it is just a little bit. But when you make a grilled cheese sandwich, you have three parts. You have a top level of bread. You have cheese in the center. And on the bottom, you have another slice of bread. But the one thing that you need to remember is the things that you see on the top of your bread up here, you're going to toast that if it's a grilled cheese sandwich. So you're going to see the grilled part of the bread, but you're not going to see the bread that didn't get grilled underneath. Then you're going to maybe see the cheese that's in between because it's going to meld out and be really nice. And then on the bottom, what you're going to see is the very bottom of that last piece of toast. So that's kind of what you need to compare making this quilt to. That's what it's going to be like. We're not going to put cheese on our quilt, though. We're going to put batting in the center of our quilt. So let's go back over our quilt so that you understand what we've done so far. We made a quilt that has 7 rows down and 6 columns going across. And those are all sewn so that you have an intersection that meets up with the different blocks. And then what we did is we ironed all this so that it's nice and flat. And if you remember, there's some thread tails that we got rid of because we don't want any of our thread to show through if there's a great big long tail of thread or if there's a bunch of thread. You don't want that showing through. So clean your back up so that it looks really nice. I've done a pretty good job. Some places, like, see, here's one I didn't catch. But those things, don't clip them clear to the end. Clip them so that there's a little bit left, but they're not showing through, okay? So this quilt top, when I measure it, it is 60 going across, and it's 70 inches going down. So the next thing that I had to do was I had to make sure that my back fabric, and this is my back fabric here, and I've got it like the grilled cheese sandwich. I've got it so that this part of it, the grilled part, is on the very bottom. So this backing I have made to fit this size quilt so that it goes 60 inches across and 70 inches down. And what I did, because I'm going to put this quilt on my quilting machine and quilt it, I have made it about 65 going across by 75 going down, so that there's some give room to when I'm quilting it. So I usually tell my customers, I need you to have it at least 4 inches larger. The back needs to be 4 inches larger all the way around, so that you've got that little bit of give when you roll your quilt. It works out really nicely for you. And then I cut, this is batting. I talked last time about what kind of batting I like. This is a cotton polyester batting. It's 20% polyester and 80% cotton, and it is 90 inches wide. So I have cut it so that it's about 65, and then the width of it is 90. So it will be a little bit longer than I need, but we're going to use it to put in between our 2 layers. This is a cream color, and you'll notice that I have cream on my quilt here. I have cream on my backing. If these were white, it wouldn't matter. I could still use a cream batting. And this is a very thin batting. See how thin that is? But that will give it the loft that I need to quilt, and it will also give it the warmth that I need to be a sufficient quilt. I don't live in the Arctic, so I don't need a big, thick quilt batting. So I'm going to take this, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch it out so that you can see, and then I'm just going to move it over. But before I move that over, remember, we've got to put the cheese on our sandwich. So I'm going to start to do this, and then we'll come back to me moving the quilt top over. Let me just show you how you do this. This is going to be 60 inches across. Like I told you, it's bigger, and I can cut it down if I want to a little bit later on. But I also have a problem here because this is not stretched out really very good. I've got some overlap here. I just wanted to demonstrate to you how this is put together. When you do put it together, and like I have said before, I'm really fortunate because I have a quilt wall, and my quilt wall helps me. You can do this on a table, or you can do this on the floor, but you don't want there to be a bunch of bunching up of any of this. You want it to be flat against each other, and you want it to adhere. That's why I pinned it. And next time that we get together, I'll show you how I make it even more permanent. But today I just wanted to show you the layers and what we'll be doing. Okay, we're getting a little bit tighter here. Can you see how that's a little bit tighter and a little bit better? All right. And now comes the fun part. We're going to move this over to here so that we have our 3 layers. And we do want these 3 layers to be nice and down like this. what you're going to see when I move this over is that this batting will adhere to this really, really well. It's kind of like, I wouldn't say it's like a glue, but I would say that the batting, because of the content of the fibers, is going to adhere somewhat to this already. So I'm going to move this over. We're just going to work with this piece right here, and then I can work with the other half of the quilt. What we want is, we want to line up these three different pieces. We want to line them up so that number one, there's not a bunch of bubbles in it, and number two, so that your angles are exactly the same. In other words, we need to work from a point where this is going to be squared off. And the point that we're going to be working from, and we'll be doing this next time, is we're going to be working from the middle of the quilt out. So we'll start in the middle, and I'll show you how we connect these so that everything is lined up really well. But this is where it all starts, is in the middle of the quilt, up at the top, okay? And we're going to actually use some pins and some adhesive spray-on that is like a glue, but it's just a temporary glue, so that these three pieces will stay together for us to quilt this quilt and make it so that instead of being 3 different layers, it's 3 layers that have combined together into a nice quilt, and a lovely throw for your couch or some other place in your house. We'll also talk about how we finish this quilt off, which is, I've decided to round the corners just a little bit so that we don't have to do any special treatment on the corners. But I wanted to show you today that this is the concept behind what a quilt is. It's like a grilled cheese sandwich. And it's very simple to do, but it is time consuming, and you do need to do it accurately if you want a good product. And so the next time that we get together, I'm going to show you some ways that you can quilt this, either by hand or by machine, your sewing machine, or if you want to take it to a long arm quilter, you can do that. But I'm going to show you 2 or 3 different ways that you can actually do this at home, and you won't need to take it to anybody or do anything with it. Now you're probably wondering where I got this batting. I have my own batting in my quilt studio. However, you can get it at Hobby Lobby, you can get it at Michael's, you can get it online. If you have made your quilt the same size as mine, which is 60 by 70, you should order or you should purchase a lap size quilt or a twin size quilt batting. And if someone is helping you, you can say, they'll say, well, what size do you need? And you'll say, well, my quilt is 60 by 70, and so I'll need something like that. A twin or a lap size would work really fine. Last time we were together, I showed you a very fluffy batting. I would stay away from that. I still would stay away from that on this kind of a quilt. To start with, it's best to just use a really, really fine, nice, thin batting. So Warm and Natural, Quilter's Dream, there's a whole bunch of products on the market that are this thin, but that will give you a nice quilt and that will actually be warm and wonderful to have also. So that's the concept of what we do with a quilt, is to build it like we build a grilled cheese sandwich. And next time we get together, we're going to finish this quilt. So have a great week, and I hope that you're prepared to come back next time to get your quilt all done. Thanks. See you soon.